Alright, welcome to the video on how to start building your 10th Cavalry Brigade. And of course, as with everything in bolt action, you should start with your infantry. And so that's what we're going to do today. Now, unfortunately for the modeler, the Warlord doesn't provide us with a lot of options when it comes to 10th Cavalry Brigade models. There is a single package of the 10th Cavalry Brigade squad, 10 men, 1 NCO. They're all rifles with 1 BAR modeled, which is perfect, except it's only the infantry squads. You don't have enough to build everything else that's in a platoon, which is what you see in front of you here. Now, there's actually in front of you more models than in an actual platoon, and we're going to talk about why that is. So, let's take a look first at the officer, basically the command structure. Alright, so the officer team, really, our command team, is really made up of three men. And I'll swap him out for now. I'll explain why in a second. You have what I'll call the officer. That's the actual lieutenant that's in charge of the platoon. You have his lookout or bodyguard. And then you have the pod officer, which is the deputy commander. So you can kind of think of him as a sergeant, if you will. This is basically the base of the command squad that you've got. Now, what's interesting is that the way the different sections are built, you are going to probably want to use your pod officer in a different capacity. So let's go ahead and talk next about the actual infantrymen in the 4 different sections that made up the platoon. Alright, now 10th Cavalry Brigade was originally a cavalry unit. They did not make it a armored cavalry or mechanized cavalry or motorized cavalry. It was just the 10th Cavalry Brigade. But they completely removed the horses and replaced it with vehicles of all sorts. And the basic structure of a cavalry section was 6 men. 4 of those sections made up a platoon. Okay, so that's what we have in front of you. 4 sections. Now, you'll notice each section is identical with the exception of 1. Each of these 3 are 5 rifles and a BAR. Now, this section is actually supposed to be 6 rifles. And if you want, you can, get another model and replace that with a rifle. Entirely fine. But what I prefer to do, to follow the way the actual platoons were structured, because this is the way the table of organization equipment lays out the platoon. You have 24, 25, 26, 27 men, and then 2 truck drivers, and then you have 1 motorcycle driver. Okay? That is your platoon, 30 men. But the way it was put in, actually operationally used in practice, is these 3 sections will remain full strength, equipped the way they are. This section would have 1 member pulled out and made the anti-tank rifleman, and which is why we'll swap this guy out and put him in. And so we'll put the deputy commander in charge of the anti-tank rifle team as a result. Okay. Now, of course, weapons is modeled on officers, so if you want, you could, do that. But both the officer and deputy officer were armed on paper with a pistol, not a rifle. So you can do what you want. Obviously, if he already is issued a rifle and is given the anti-tank gun, it also makes sense to do this because you're not going to just leave the rifle lying around. Or, of course, you can swap it like this so that the officer has the rifle. Again, play with it the way you want. But these 5 remaining men can't be their own section according to bolt action, Warlord Games. And that's entirely fine because the way this section was used was two ways. Let me back these up a bit. This section would be used to essentially keep ammunition supplies to the sections. They'd also be used for replacements, or they could be used to strengthen the other sections. So you could have 2 8-man and 1 7-man section, 1 ATR, and then the officer team. Okay. Now, the way this unit was basically how it traveled, we're going to keep the anti-tank rifle there, is you had each truck will carry 12 men back here. The officer would be in the passenger seat on one. The bodyguard would be on the, or lookout would be in the passenger seat of the other truck, and then the deputy commander would be riding in the motorcycle. That is the full platoon and how it's transported. Now, until Warlord actually allows us to give the officer team a motorcycle and driver, there's not much you can do. Now, since there's a motorcycle driver and 2 truck drivers in here, you do have the option, if you feel like it, of taking those out and putting 3 more rifles into your platoon anywhere you want. So you actually could have a 6th man or more in here. So maybe the driver of the motorcycle makes the 6th man there. And then you've got, now the motorcycle driver would have the black jacket because he's a motorcycle driver. He's not going to have the long jacket. So then you can take the 2 riflemen from the field drivers and put them in here as well, as if you want to bolster one of the platoons. Entirely possible, but you're probably best to allocate the men, so 1 to each, that we have 9, 9, and 8 if you want to do it that way. Now, when I play, what I often do is I'll have when I break it up like this, I'll have these 2 units in the trucks, so they'll both have a ride, and I can put these guys in, leaving these 7 on foot, basically, since I can't really. You could split them according to some optional rules that are in the back of the big rule book, but because these 2 don't allow you to split up the officer team at all, there is kind of an issue with how you can transport the whole thing the way it was done historically. Okay, so if you eventually get casualties, compensate for casualties, you could easily do 2 trucks like this. These 1 section, 2 section in this truck, and officer team, anti-tank rifle team in this section in this truck. The whole thing can be motorized that way. That's just a possibility. Alright, quick note on modeling. The officer teams, or sorry, the officer and NCOs obviously get their black leather jackets, but they don't have to wear black leather jackets. They can wear the regular great coat. And so I've actually chosen to use this model to actually give him a great coat instead. Now, he's distinctive. He's the only model in the unit that looks like this, but he has basically had to extend his great coat using green putty or green stuff to make it a little bit longer so it has the right feel. Okay. Now, as far as where do you get miniatures for this, because like I said, Warlord only gives us 1 unit, 1 box to play with, and that box basically has these guys. Let's see, move these over, so we've got these are what you get. You don't get any anti-tank rifles, you don't get any officers, you get a single unit of 10 men and a single BAR. So can't quite go that route by just buying these. Now, you obviously should buy it. It's a great way to start. But there's two other companies that you can actually leverage. The one that I leveraged the most was for this particular platoon happened to be Gorgon Miniatures or Gorgon Studios. And here I'll put a link down in the description to their site. And here are here's on the web address on the screen. But these are the models I got from them. So these are the minis I got from Gorgon Studios. Now you'll notice I only have 3 that are in the black jackets, and the rest are in greatcoats. Important note here is that when Gorgon Studios made their 10th Cavalry Brigade models, they made them to whether intentionally or not, to represent only the members of the reconnaissance battalion, which was entirely mounted on motorcycles. So they were entirely clad in the black leather jackets. So all of these models came with black leather jackets. There's a support team you can get which has a light motor, which the 10th Cavalry Brigade did not use, and the anti-tank rifle plus 2 assistants. Matter of fact, I think that's where this one actually goes. Then there's a set of officers, NCOs, and that's where 2 of these are from. I've got a couple more used in, one of them's in an artillery group, and one of the guys from here is in an artillery group as well. I've kind of moved them up in other places. They're not all in my infantry platoon. Then this is the BAR, light machine gun squad, set that Gorgon Studios creates. And 2 different BAR poses, which is great, and they call this a loader. This is probably back from when Warlord Games mistakenly labeled these as light machine guns and required you to have a loader, which is why it's presented that way in the kit. It's great to have additional models, you know, to have different poses. So these are the models from Gorgon Studios. Now again, these 3 are in black jackets. I didn't need to do anything with them. These I had to do some green stuff work. Let's take a look at that. Alright, so here is the anti-tank rifleman. And really, like I say, it's not that difficult. You basically roll out a very, very, very thin sheet of green stuff and lay it over his legs, using the X-Acto knife to slit up the back to put a little, like a break in it so that it falls apart there. And it looks pretty good, especially if you slowly feather the green stuff into the rest of the mini. Looks very, very seamless. I've done that for all 3 of the anti-tank riflemen that I have. So it's not that bad. It looks pretty good. I think so anyway. Now, FYI, the reason I have 3 is that the anti-tank rifles were not delivered to the unit at the start of the war. They were delivered a few days later in one of the cities that they were headed to. When they got there, that's when they got all their allotment of anti-tank rifles. And so I'm working on a specific scenario which has several anti-tank rifles, the anti-tank guns, and Bofors defending it. It's one of the places where the unit was able to defend the town entirely with its own men. Machik was originally given command of the brigade, but when he got to the front, he was also given extended command of some of the Border Protection Corps, as well as the National Defense battalions that were there. So he had a conglomeration of units that he was using in his defensive lines. When he got to the city, he was using just his own troops within, and he actually pulled drivers and cooks and clerks and gave them rifles, and they were also put on the front line. So that's why I have the extra anti-tank rifles. I also intend to have more platoons. I want to have at least 1 more platoon, maybe 2 more. So anyway, so that's how you do that. Very, very simple. Then with your BAR gunner and the others, it's again the same concept. You just basically layer the green stuff at the bottom of their jacket, cut a slit front and back, and just feather it in. Now I'll be the first to say this isn't a perfect sculpt, and you can actually see where the line between the two is, but from a tabletop distance it looks great. And they're in two different, BAR gunners are in 2 different poses, which is great. Now I've got 3 different poses for the BAR gunners. 2 from Warlord and 2 different ones from Gorgon Studios. Alright. Same thing with the Rifleman. I did forget to put a slit up the back of his in front of his. That was my mistake. But again, tabletop distance, you really can't tell. This one, this was Wojciech in my Clash of Heroes campaign, and this one is very hard to tell the difference. Alright, so if you go with just the Warlord box, you start with essentially this as your cavalry, your platoon, right? That's all you get. Now you can expand each by giving them some more models, but it's still not the platoon, right? So that's why it was so great to find this Gorgon Studios minis, because now I could have my additional NCO here with, oh, I don't know, let's give him, well, here, let's give him this BAR gunner, no, this BAR gunner, yeah, and since he's kneeling, let's give him a bunch of kneeling guys. And then I can actually go a little bit further and, well, let's see, let's use this loader. I made him an NCO by just keeping his black leather jacket. There's his BAR gunner, and I'll just give him these guys. Okay. Now, of course, that's not right because they're not. You're not supposed to have extra. The BAR. There shouldn't be 4 BARs, so we'll take that one out. Just, you know, we talked already about how you put the anti-tank rifle in, but now I have an officer and a bodyguard. I have an anti-tank rifle and a spotter. And so with just, and what ended up being 3 different kits from Gorgon Studios, plus 2 of the Warlords, I've got my entire core. Alright, now with, you know, the problem with the early war, especially with 10th Cavalry Brigade, if you go based on their actual size, is they're really cheap. Okay, so if we build this platoon correctly with the officer and his lookout anti-tank rifle team, and then we distribute the extra rifles, the extra 5 men, we'll just do this. Let's make this easy. We can call him the NCO now. There we go. Now it kind of looks better. But this mix here, without the trucks, is only, when you bought as a second lieutenant regular, is only 335 points. It's 360 if you buy him as a first lieutenant. If you go veteran, which is the other option, it's 431 with a second lieutenant, or 456 with a first lieutenant. 456 isn't too bad. That's 6 points away from, you know, the limit for combat patrol. You could just take one of these guys out, and you've got a combat patrol force. Not suggesting this is the most efficient way to do it, but boom, there's your unit. So 450 is a reasonable way to start. If you go ahead and throw in the trucks, well, then that's when things get, well, they stay cheap because these are very cheap. The trucks are only 39 points each regular, and you don't really want them veteran. I mean, that's 47 points, so that's kind of a waste of points. If you want to get them experienced, you can definitely do that and get, that's for 31 points. But bringing a unit on that's inexperienced, if you come in reserve, that's kind of a risky thing. But so you're looking at anywhere from, with the full platoon set up without the motorcycle, and basically missing that one soldier, you're looking at anywhere between 413 points, which assumes regular trucks. I'm not going inexperienced. All the way up to 550 if you go veteran trucks, first lieutenant, and veteran troops and all that. So not a whole lot of points, but you do have 7 dice. But at least it's a start, right? And it's not a bad start. So in the next video, we're going to talk about adding the vehicles, because that's where you start racking up some more points and you start actually getting some good combat capability with a force based on this small number of models here. So let's go ahead and hope you like that. Hope it's informative, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.